So, first of all, before I start, as usual, I'd like to thank all of you guys to be here with us for your time. With us at our Malaysian Wood Expo 2023, our Poker Talk sessions, I saw some very familiar faces. Some of them attended the morning session, some of them attended the previous sessions. So thank you guys so much for making your time. So let us proceed to our next Poker Talk sessions with Mr. Lawrence here with us. You can see a quite handsome guy here, okay, with us. So Mr. Lawrence is the chairperson of Ethical Trade Alliance. So before we proceed to the sessions with Mr. Lawrence, so let me introduce a little bit about Mr. Lawrence and also what is he going to share with us later. So as what I think Miss Ashley had mentioned, if you guys join the morning session, then you will know what am I talking about. So as what Miss Ashley had mentioned about, ESG is a main thing, a major thing all around the world. So with us, Mr. Lawrence is going to share with us a little bit of ESG, and he is actually from the Ethical Trade Alliance, which provides independent third-party audits for CSR and sustainable procurement to gather the world's best providers of ethical and sustainable products and services in a single user-friendly global platform for the exclusive use of industry associations. So Mr. Lawrence here is the chairperson. I think I've repeated a lot of times this, okay? So he's the chairperson for the Ethical Trade Alliance. He has a long history of impressive global trade and supply chain credentials. So before I list all his things, okay, he has a number of experience in a lot of things, okay? He's not only the chairperson at ETA, but also the CEO of Australian Trade and Logistics Corporation. You think he's gonna stop there? No. He is also the founder of Import Export TV and host of Trade Australia show. Oh my God. I would like to have personal interview sessions with Mr. Lawrence. How can you do so many things at the same time? So it is very clear that Mr. Lawrence is very passionate about the international trade, innovative supply chain, B2B matching, as well as implementing ethical. So are you guys ready for this round? Louder? I can't hear you. Okay, ready? I hope it warms the crowd a bit, Mr. Lawrence, but probably you need to work harder later, okay? Probably if any one of you need a cup of coffee, it's just right behind, okay? I don't mind you to spend like 2 minutes to go and grab a cup of coffee and come back, okay? We allow drinks and food somewhere here, okay? So let's pass the floor over to Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you so much, Mandy. Hi everyone. Wonderful introduction. Thanks so much, Mandy. I'm really delighted to be part of the exhibition over the next few days and really appreciate the opportunity to tell you all about the current and emerging changes in sustainability reporting and label reporting right across the world. So I'll go through this. It's very informal, so if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put your hand up and we can try and address those as well. So, as Mandy talked about, the presentation today is about international trade, but increasingly, as some of the other previous speakers, I'm sure some other speakers after me, ESG, corporate social responsibility, is becoming a real hot topic and important part of all global supply chains. So what we're going to cover in the presentation today is the challenge, the opportunity, the solution, and a little bit about us in more detail. So bear with me, we'll go through some of the presentations. Now here's some of the facts. There's a rapid increase in the way that governments all around the world, especially in Western markets, are forcing the reporting requirements on all global exporters into those markets on ESG and corporate social responsibility. So what that means is that anyone manufacturing an export product and exporting products from places like here in Malaysia to Europe, US, even Australia and other markets where I'm from, there's an increasing requirement for you to be able to demonstrate the sustainability attributes as well as the labour conditions of how those products are made in the first place. And that is a real challenge, not because it's a problem, but in most cases because there's probably a lack of policies, procedures and visibility about how you can demonstrate that you're doing the right thing. And that's really where the opportunity will kick off, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Already there's a whole range of issues that companies inadvertently are facing. Now, right now, and this slide's probably a little bit, about 12 months old now, a bit longer, there's already legislations around the world in place and enforced. So we've got California, USA, UK, right across the Europe, EU, France has got their own laws, Australia has already got laws, and Canada as well has got modern slavery laws. Now, as you can see, most of these are Western markets where they rely heavily on imported products, and they have also signed up to a lot of net zero targets and global compliance. They've also all signed the UN SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals as well. So by law, they actually have to start enforcing and increasing their enforcement transparency part of their UN obligations and requirements. Where I'm from, in Australia, there's already, not just Australia as the national reporting requirement, many states within Australia and in other countries actually put in place even tougher reporting requirements. So places like New South Wales, Tasmania, Hong Kong, Germany, Netherlands, Switzerland, as I mentioned before, they've actually got additional reporting requirements over and above just the normal thresholds of the national country requirements. And that is going to be a real impact for exporters and manufacturers who want to go into those markets. So I think we've already talked about that one, that's coming back, but there's facts as well. Now, when we talk about modern slavery and forced labour, especially in manufacturing global supply chains, modern slavery encompasses a couple of key areas. It's trafficking for labour, it's manufacturing products, there's also things like practices and slavery and forced marriage. Those aren't really an issue when it comes to global supply chains or manufacturing of goods. It's really about what we're finding is that so many countries around the world are asking, just like when you do a commercial shipment, whether it's an air freight or a sea freight, you'll have a commercial set of documents. So you'll have a commercial invoice, a packing declaration, you'll have a bill of lading, and increasingly, especially in the timber sector, they're going to start asking you for labour declarations or modern slavery declarations. Now, if you're not prepared for that yet, yes, you can do self-declarations and do a checklist, but what will happen is that increasingly they're relying on third-party independent verification. So just like you have a certificate of origin when you deal a free trade agreement or to get reduced tariffs and so forth, most cases they're going to ask for a third-party verification of what you're claiming to be true on your other documentation is actually independently verified. So that's important. Now, what's happened here in the US, obviously one of the world's biggest importing markets and the world's biggest economies, they've actually put in place what's called WROs. WROs stands for Withhold Release Orders. Now, what that means in true sense is that products have arrived at customs at the US border, and they've actually stopped those shipments being released. That's why it's called a WRO, to withhold the release of that shipment. And this has been a real problem for a lot of exporting countries. It's predominantly China, but you'll see on the list, unfortunately, Malaysia is actually number 2. It's actually got 7 at the time of that report. There was actually 7 shipments that were held up at the US customs, and they refused to release those shipments because they couldn't verify, or there was suspicion that those products were manufactured through some sort of forced labour or some sort of way of not being able to prove that it was free of forced labour. Now, Malaysia's not alone, there's other countries you can see on that list, but this is at the very early stages. As increased supply chain transparency starts to take place, the increased use of tracking, data tracking, shipment tracking, this is going to become more and more of an issue for all countries. So So any country who want to manufacture product and send them into the US market, and the EU's already started to follow, and even where I'm from in Australia, they've already changed and have proposed more changes to the Customs Act, so that forced labour or products conceived to or risk of forced labour manufacturing will actually become prohibited goods. So just like you can't ship products of illicit drugs or unsustainable timber and so forth because they'll be prohibited products, any products that will be suspected of being derived or manufactured of forced labour will actually fall under prohibited products, and therefore the risk of being stopped at the border or actually cancelled itself. So this is a real problem that companies all around the world need to start preparing for now. It's not something that's a long way away, it's already happening in the US and in the EU already. So in addition to the US market with the WROs, that we call release orders, in the EU, in Europe, one of the largest combined markets on the planet, they have a thing called CBAM coming up in 2026. CBAM stands for Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanisms. Now, separate to the labour conditions, what CBAM is all about is they're going to charge higher duty rates for products that aren't manufactured sustainably. So if you have two products side by side, one comes from a manufacturing plant that can demonstrate that it has zero or negative impacts on sustainability, that product can go in at the standard duty rate. If it comes from another manufacturing plant in the same location and the same product, but that product is made with higher carbon pollution or poor sustainability practices, that is going to attract a higher duty rate when it hits the European Union in 2026. So these are real commercial impacts that, again, Malaysian companies with great manufacturer, great exporting nation really needs to start preparing for right now, because we're already in the middle of 2023. So we need to start as manufacturing nations here to prepare for this, because it's very hard. You can always, in most cases, you're probably doing the right thing, but it's how do you verify that? How do you demonstrate that to global buyers and overseas importers in the US, EU, and again, carbon border adjustment mechanisms, even though the EU in 2026, most other markets like Australia, US are already going to start to do this as well. California in the US has already started to put this in place as well. So there's a lot of areas, cement, aluminium, construction, electronic, and other products. So carbon footprint reporting is really important. This is where it's not just the governments and the border agencies taking note. What is happening increasingly around ESG and CSR, ESG, environmental, social, governance, those three acronyms, those three letters that make up the acronyms, from a government perspective, a compliance perspective, you can report that. But the social part is becoming a really important issue as well. What are companies doing who manufacture products around the world? What's their social impact? What are they doing, not just on the product itself, but are they helping through donations, through workforce training, through environmental programs, through social programs to upskill and help education? All those type of things are really becoming important. When it comes to CSR, corporate social responsibility, it's no longer enough to say that you're making a profit. How are you actually making a difference? And this is really important because it's important because not just the border issues and the compliance issues and tax issues, but importantly, the buyers, the consumers and the external stakeholders of your manufacturing plant or of your corporate entity are increasingly wanting to find out what does the company stand for, what are your ethics, what are your morals. Is it not just about making money, it's about making sure that those products don't do harm, but they can actually do good. Now, why that's important is because there's been a lot of statistics, which I think I'll come to a little bit later, about consumers are prepared to pay more for products that they can see are making positive impact and making a difference. So, especially in Western markets, the same markets who want to buy Malaysian products and other products from around the world, they're prepared to pay more, so therefore you can actually create a higher profitability, a better revenue stream. And this is where how you can really start to prepare for these changes. This is where Ethical Trade Alliance is trying to help companies and associations. So the opportunity for Ethical Trade Alliance here in Malaysia is to work with industry associations to help them upskill, educate and prepare their members, manufacturing exporters, for this wave of reporting requirements and to help them demonstrate the right thing. So that's what we're going to try and work through with all the associations, not just here in Malaysia, but right around the world. You know, to prepare for the change, what we know, this is what we were saying earlier, 50%, not just a small market, 50% of Western consumers have been surveyed and they're happy to pay a premium for ethically sourced products and sustainably manufactured products. This is really important because the solution comes down to how we can help verify the good work that a manufacturing company is doing and the associations doing themselves. So this is what we want to do. Ethical Trade Alliance, we provide independent audits, but before companies go for that audit, we work with their associations to try and upskill them, educate them, train them, so that they can comply with all these new regulations. And we do that as a way of trying to help the association evaluate back to their members. We do that on a whole range of different services through training courses, online and so forth. We do blockchain track and trace as well. And this is essentially a marketplace that is all online and in person when it works with the associations. But the online marketplace is a really simple dashboard. It's a bit hard to see on that screen, but it's just like having a specific trading platform for products and services that can help clean up every aspect of the supply chain. So we can help with the audits, we can help with packaging, shipping, warehousing, a whole range of shrink wrap. It doesn't matter what it needs, even ethical finance, carbon reporting, carbon offset purchases as well. So those type of things are really important. And these modern slavery audits, they can become that independent verification. So what it does, it gives you a competitive advantage over other exporting manufacturers and other exporting companies because you can independently verify that the products you've made actually made free of these forced labour. So not only is it helping you with the border compliance, it can actually potentially help you with winning more customers and more business as well. Because especially when you're dealing with some of these timber products, if you're in an RFQ or a tender process and you want to stand out above competitors and you can show independent verification, ethics, sustainability, that can make a positive difference to being shortlisted and potentially even win the business against other competitors. So on the other side, what we're working with is the forced labour and manufacturing audits are upstream. Downstream, we're working with Western buyers and local buyers here across the world as well to show that their procurement process is actually sustainably sourced as well. So it's not just about the manufacturing and the export, it's also about how you can verify as a company buying product and importing product, or services for that matter, that you have a sustainability procurement structure in place where you're verifying and doing the right thing by your organisation so that your organisation can comply with your own ESG and CSR goals to your stakeholders, shareholders and all your governments as well, your corporate governments. So one of the things that we're doing, which is a big part of especially CBAM and some other products, is to showcase how we can partner with companies to demonstrate and reduce carbon footprint reporting. So that's important. It's, as the old adage goes, if you can't report it and you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So one of the big things about Ethical Trade Alliance is how we can help put in place monitoring, measurements, and therefore improvement, continual improvement projects and programs with the association in partnership with us on specific projects. So the ESG and CSR training programs help dive into specific areas of your supply chains, whether it's through the manufacturing, carbon reporting, shipping optimization, container utilization, packaging, product lifecycle management, how you can really try and look at not just the manufacturing process, but the usability and even the recycling or returnability of those products and packaging on global supply chains. Those are really important because these days, again, even in Europe, they're forcing a lot of manufacturing companies to prove that they're going to be liable for the disposability of the packaging, disposability of the products themselves. That's starting to take hold already, and we know that in the next decade or so, if you can't demonstrate that your products, not just the product itself, but the packaging and disposability, has to be considered responsibly as well. So there's a whole range of service we talked about before, but essentially, these are some examples. It's not just about the audits, but if you're a fashion product, you can go from plastic coat hangers to cardboard, you can look at bamboo or seaweed shrink wrap, you can use better shipping lines and carbon sustainability, different recycled pallets, recycled cardboard, a whole range of products and services that can help every aspect of the supply chain. It's not just about the audits are a great starting point, but we want to help clean up every aspect of international trade as far as we can, in every aspect that we can. So, as I said, that's essentially the overview of Ethical Trade Alliance. As I said, as a summary, I know we've got some time, I think, Mandy, if there's any questions, but essentially it's really trying to help companies comply with all these increasing reporting requirements for international trade. So, thank you very much, everyone, and thanks, Mandy, again for having us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. So we're going to go around the floor. If you have any questions for Mr. Lawrence to answer, please raise your hands and we can pass the mic over. Any questions? Okay. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Lawrence. Thank you for the wonderful sharing. My name is Jason, and I'd like to ask actually two questions. Because the first one is on the sharing just now you shared something like we can see from Europe or other countries they are actually practicing. I mean the consumers are actually more aware on buying products that are actually compliant to the ESG models. But as we are seeing in Malaysia or even Southeast Asia, I could say that the awareness is not so strong yet, and because Malaysia as an emerging country, many would say that Malaysia today, like Europe or US or even China today, is like the upcoming 5-10 years of what Malaysia is going to be. So my question is, like normally how long does it take for the people to actually have the awareness to know more about ESG, and how will Malaysia actually go? Like how long does the process to go?
I think it's hard to put a predictive timeline exactly, but from all my interactions around the world, you're probably looking within the next 5 years. As soon as 2026 is only 3 years away, 2.5 years away, and what will happen there is, because all of us, especially in your age group, you're a consumer, so you actually make a change with your purchasing power. The governments around the world, like Europe and the US and even back in Australia, they're going to force legislation. That'll make a change in the next, it's already happening now in the US, definitely by the end of 2030. But to be honest, even if you're not legislating the changes, the consumers your age and younger are going to be changing the way they purchase. And that it's not just on a B2C level, on a B2B level, when you look at a supply chain, you've got tier 1 suppliers, tier 1 suppliers then follow down to tier 2, tier 3 and so forth. So what's happening with increased supply chain transparency, it's no longer good enough just to say the supplier who makes this footstool is doing the right thing. The supplier who provides the leather, supplies the foam, supplies the timber, and maybe even the brackets. All of those different 4 suppliers also have to do the right thing. So that becomes what we call some multi-layered supply chain verification. So it's like a domino effect, and that's going to take hold very quickly. It's already starting to happen now.
So speaking of the biggest domino, what do you think would be the biggest domino? Would it come from the pressure from the United Nations, or is it coming from our governance itself, or even, will it come from from us as a consumer itself?
Look, I think the UN SDGs a lot of countries, most countries have signed up that they've complied with that, and they've put themselves on a journey for modern slavery reporting or sustainability targets. So WTO, World Trade Organization, and the UN, the majority of countries have signed those agreements, and therefore they've committed to a path that they're on that journey. Some countries like the US and EU region will get there faster than others, but to be blunt, I don't think there's going backwards. It's going to happen. And I think everyone agrees that everyone wants to do the right thing for the environment, sustainability. They want to make sure that they can improve the lifestyles of everyone. And I think consumers are taking more responsibility. They don't want to buy products that are actually hurting the way someone lives overseas or around the world. That they can see now through social media, through transparency, that it's very good to buy, a $1 T-shirt if that means that there's a child somewhere in India making that and not having a great lifestyle or living conditions. So I think that itself is changing the way consumers are wanting to buy that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, anyone else that have any questions?
You also mentioned as well.
Hello, thank you for the wonderful sharing. My question is, in moving towards ESG, large corporation, I believe they will support this movement because it's a good movement. But for micro, small, medium enterprise, they may face a big hurdle, especially in financial and reporting, documentation, etc. So what is, from your experience, what is the first small step or for SMEs for them to adopt anything?
Yeah, thank you. It's a really great question and a very important challenge. So I think that question is probably the number one reason we've called Ethical Trade Alliance an alliance, is because we believe if we can do those type of services through associations, they can help their SME members. Because the big companies, the multinationals, they have got the resources, the departments, and they can engage big firms to try and help them. What we want to do is give the industry associations, for example, MTC, we can help them to put those opportunities down to those SMEs by training and workshops and keep it very cost effective. And in some cases, you don't even need to have any specific costs. You can just increase awareness through association engagement with the members. So it's really around an education process and standardising some reporting requirements and some checklists that they can help to verify that they're doing those right things. Yeah, great question, thank you.
Any more questions from the floor? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so if you guys are too shy to ask questions in the public, you can always visit their booth, the Ethical Trade Alliance booth, and see Mr. Lawrence meet, have a one-to-one, very exclusive conversation with Mr. Lawrence. I think he's very welcome on it, right, Mr. Lawrence? Yes. So if you guys are too shy, just do drop by their booth at Ethical Trade Alliance. Okay. So thank you once again, Mr. Lawrence, for the very insightful sharing. So I believe that all of you have gained a lot today, right? Right? Okay. Probably it's after tea time, maybe, I would assume. Maybe. Okay. So next, at 4 o'clock, Mr. Lawrence. So next at 4 o'clock today with us, we have Miss Sunita binti Muhammad, the Deputy Director of Licensing from Malaysian Timber Industry Board, also known as MTIB, with us to share about the timber export and import regulation in Malaysia. So if you are interested, do join us at 4 o'clock, same spot. We're not going to change anywhere, still here at 4 o'clock. See you later. Bye.